All right. Well, let's see. It's 1:02, so let's get started because this is valuable.
Cool.
All right. Well, welcome to another installment of Lunch with an Artist. Today we host Ayana Mack, and we get to learn all about design. So, welcome, Ayana.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, in our preparatory meeting, I learned so much about the different facets of your art practice. So, if you can please kind of give us a little bit of a background on those different sections of your practice.
Yeah, so I do a little bit of everything. And when I was explaining to Bithyah, I am into design, I'm into marketing, visual art, and all of these different aspects kind of make up my business as a whole. So I'll give you a little bit of background on myself before I jump into that, just so that you can get some context. So I am born and raised in Boston, native Bostonian. Um, I went to Boston Arts Academy, which is the only arts high school in Boston, and graduated in 2007. I went to Artists for Humanity during that same time, and then off to Suffolk University for design. And I'm sharing that because it was just like this pattern of art, right? Not just through my education, but afterwards, I continue to stay in the community I'm from and share not just my story, but also participate in events and things that were happening in the art space. So around 2014, I started to sell my artwork. So at that time, I got a full-time job as a senior designer in real estate. And then I ended up getting pretty much having time to make work. So before that, I was working retail. There was no time to do anything. So finally, I get this job and I get this opportunity to make work. And I start to sell like hand painted glassware. I'm attending all of these events in different communities around me. Like I said, I was born and raised here, grew up in Mattapan. So I've been, really getting involved in my community, in my spaces, and really just trying to learn and see what's out there. So from around that time, I was also designing. So the one thing about me is I like to do a little bit of everything all the time. I'm never just working on one project. I'm always working on multiple things. Like I've juggled 5 to 10 projects at one time. Yes. So that is a little bit about my background. But when it comes to the things that I'm doing today, I am designing. I'm director of marketing in different roles. I do brand development, and just to explain some of that, because a lot of people don't, some people don't really know what that is. So as a graphic designer, my training and the things that I've learned have been in like logos, different flyers, learning about font, text, color, layout. And as I started to grow within my career, I learned more about user experience. So how people are interacting with the work that they see, like the visual things they see. And taking that to another level, I moved into a role of marketing. And now combining all of those things, right? Thinking about user experience, thinking about how things are visually translated. I'm now going more into the strategy behind it and how does this information get shared to different people and solve the problem that's in front of me. So when I say problem, I'm thinking of like, say I'm doing an event for a community organization or a massive event where we want to pull people out into public spaces. I have to think about how that information gets to those people. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a very quick, tight summary of marketing and design. So, my career has definitely shifted from just doing like this one thing to growing more into strategy and development. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. And everyone, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat or raise your hand, because I don't know about everyone here, but designers seem, there's it's kind of this ambiguous field. And then as an artist, sometimes if you're not noticed through your art, that means it's perfect, right? Like if people are just experiencing it without thinking about, oh, that's the drawing or that's the music, whatever. But if it's just kind of like permeates throughout the experience, you did a really great job. So as a designer, how do you let people know about yourself and about your practice? Because in the very art that you do, it's about promoting others.
Mhm.
How do you balance that?
Balancing sharing my design work with other folks, like that side of my life.
Yes, like sometimes a difficulty that some artists have is promotion of self and finding opportunities and expanding what they're able to do and not getting pigeonholed. So how do you manage that artistic platform of your image as an artist in the different
Yeah.
spaces like design
Yeah.
and strategy, marketing? Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really challenging because since I have my hands in all of these places, it's like you were saying, how do you share it? How do you express it without like over the top, right? So what I found when I started designing for different organizations, some of the people I've worked with have been like the Boston Arts and Music Soul Festival. I've worked with Congresswoman Ayana Presley, the Massachusetts Association of Realtors, like so many organizations across different sectors in the city. And I had found that a lot of those opportunities came through relationship building and not necessarily me throwing out like, hey, I'm a designer and I need work. It was through conversation, it was through networking, it was through being in spaces. And that I've always had a design project because of the relationship building. So I never really had to promote that as much. When it came to the art, I having a background in design and understanding like you in order to sell this work, people want to know about you, they want to know what you do, what's the story behind it. So I early on had to kind of get over not sharing about myself. I had to when you ask me about social media, I'm like, I don't really like it, but I teach it, I can do it, but I truthfully am like, I'd rather not, but I understand the power behind it and what you need to do to use that tool to help excel your business.
Mm-hmm.
So early on, I got over the fact that I'm not going to share, and I chose to share my work, and I chose to kind of share when I was selling stuff, share discounts and coupons. And a lot of it was trial and error, right? I didn't know, and Instagram algorithms and Facebook and all of that. So continuously like shifting and changing my strategy would happen. And like I said at the beginning, pretty much getting over the nervousness or trying to, and just trying something new. So that's how I, promoted my social media side of it and visual art side. Yeah.
So I have a question if nobody has a question yet. I have a question about your promotion and your creation of the logo design, right? So when you're approached, have you found so far in the projects that you've had that um, that what they're asking for is just naturally in your wheelhouse, or are you finding yourself having to kind of synthesize the things that they're talking about, what vision they have for what they're doing, and then creating from that, right? Am I making sense? I guess another way I'm
Yeah.
asking the question is like people, I'm imagining, I don't know, I'm not a visual artist, but I'm imagining that you have a certain, you bring something that people enjoy seeing
Mm-hmm.
and they say, okay, can you do this branding for us? Uh,
Yeah.
or do you find yourself like starting from scratch sometimes on a personal side to actually create?
Yeah. So as a designer, I have my opinions, I have my feelings, I have things I love and things I enjoy. And one of the things I feel like with a good designer and a good design team is the ability to listen to your client and the ability to really hear what they're saying in order to convey their message, right? Because they're hiring you to do a job, not necessarily because they've seen your portfolio, they like the work that you do, they love your style or whatever. But there does come a point where you have to kind of take a step back, and maybe you love, like I love orange and yellows and bright colors. And most of the people who come at me, they know that. So it's a little easy it's not as challenging to work with them. But there are folks who using a bright color on a brand or an organization that isn't necessarily bright and loud and alive like that is not a smart move. So I very much have had to kind of like, I have to think about the client first, right? I have to think about your needs. What do you want? And tailor like my ideas to reflect that. So still my artwork is in it, my illustrative ideas. But at the end of the day, I am still putting like your opinion first, which can be really hard, especially because I'm not just a designer, like I'm also an artist. I'm very sensitive and believe in my work in a certain way. So yeah.
I can totally relate. That's wonderful. I have a couple of questions in the chat. Number one, what is your art medium?
Yes. So my medium, I have a couple. I work in color pencil, graphite, acrylic, and watercolor. And it really depends on what I am in the mood for. So over the last couple of years, I started to do a lot of experimenting with different mediums. And for a long time, I played around with different ones, but for a while, I would use mediums like pencil and acrylic, but now getting more into color pencil.
And also a comment, by the way, your background, the flowers, hanging color is also beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I love, this is my kitchen space. So I have, it's like my gallery wall of other artists stuff in here. So
that was our pre-conversation today. Wonderful. Does anybody have a question so far into the world of design, or is everybody familiar with design already? I know I wasn't. Well,
go ahead. Can I ask a question? Can you just, you talked about, Ayana, design of like logos and the visual. Is that primarily the kind of designing that you do, is in the visual, like how to help somebody express who they are, who their organization is?
Yeah, I've done logo development. I've done printed materials like flyers, booklets, annual reports. So some of like fun things, you know, like flyers, and then boring things like annual reports, but try to make them really exciting. So I can do a lot of technical work, as well as some of the packaging design, not packaging design from scratch, but maybe like labels and things that wrap around. So across the board, I've worked on different types of design work, like graphic design work.
Do you see any connections between, you know, I hear this phrase that people talk about, designed like experiences, designing conversations, designing. Do you see a connection between that visual design work that you do and designing discussions, events, like design in experiences?
I think they do relate. I really do. I think that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think oftentimes people are like, oh, this is a designer or this is an artist, and they live in this one box. But the reality is, with visual artists and designers, we create experiences, right, through this work, because we're pulling in the viewer, we're pulling in the person to feel, to experience, to do something with this, or to have an action behind this. So most people don't say that, or they don't think it. But if you want to take like a brand, or you want to take something to a new level, you should be thinking about, you should be thinking beyond the design, which can be intimidating at first. Like, say you're starting a new brand, you know, you're more excited about like, what does this thing look like? But I would recommend like thinking in that way, right? Thinking about like, well, what would this look like, and what would this feel like? Say it's a restaurant, right? What does this look like on a menu? Like, what would it look like on a to-go box? And does this really express or feel like something that our organization or our restaurant wants to convey? So I think it's a definitely a new part of the conversation that should be had. So.
Well, I feel like that was part of the conversation before, so I might as well bring it in now. I was commenting on some really powerful murals that are here in the Boston area, right around here, South Bay and such. And Ayana said that over her right shoulder, the muralist that I was commenting on made that painting right there. And Ayana, for those of us who are not visual artists, when you say going beyond the art, is there some kind of element that we could look for in the art when something captivates us, when something causes an emotional response, because some of these murals around here do for me. How do they do that? How do artists do that? Yeah.
I love that question, but I think it's different for everybody, right? Like we all have a different process, and some of us, I think that we all, artists, we all express ourselves in different ways, and some may be way deeper than others, right? You may look at something and be like, oh, that's a really great pineapple. I want to draw this pineapple. And another artist might relate this pineapple back to their culture and the Caribbean and all of these things. So I really think that it depends on the artist who's doing it. But even with the artist doing it, you never really know until somebody else sees it. So I think that we're all going to have a different view, a different perspective on a piece of work. But it's not something that I feel like you can't really explain. It's hard to explain it, right? Like when I think about my process, years before this, I would just make art and experiment and try to figure it out. And now I do not make art if I'm not in the mood for it, right? Like I don't force myself to make a piece of artwork. Mm-hmm. I try to really think about what I'm doing. My process, I like to light incense. I like to feel a certain way. I will look at reference images and choose images that speak to me. And reference images are images that I use to help with like light and dark shadows, maybe perspective and different things like that. So my process goes all the way into the work that I create, whereas some artists may not do that, but it still will hit you in some way. And maybe it won't, right? Like I've walked through museums and I'm like, that doesn't do it for me. And there are some pieces where I will walk in front of it and I will stand there and I'll stare at it and just be so in love and involved with it and want to know more. Yeah.
That's neat. Well, I have a request in the chat to see some of your artwork.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to, I can share it. And if you would like to share what you'd like about it, I think there are about, 8 pieces. Would you like me to stop on it, and then you tell me, or just flow?
We can flow through and I'll just talk about it.
Okay. All right.
So I will explain as the work is going through. This is the work front that you are seeing is from a collection called Forgiveness is a Place, Welcome. And in 2021, I had my first gallery show, and the work was created out of the beginnings of a breakup that I was going through years ago. And I ended up expressing that. So immediately after the breakup, the first thing I did was I started to draw, and I continued drawing all the way through like the pandemic. So this work is from like 2019 to 2021, 22. And I use different mediums. So what I mentioned earlier was I use like graphite, which this piece is. I use color pencil, watercolor, and each of the pieces, when I talk about what they mean and what they feel like, they were created at a time that I was going through something. And these were earlier pieces in the collection. So this piece is called Choose. The piece before was Disengaged. And it was just really expressing those emotions, the deep emotions I had at the time. And I also wanted to challenge myself with the different mediums and different levels of detail. So this piece is Visible. And the graphite work was so different from what I was doing before. I could always use pencil, but I never really, thank you, I never really got into it until this point. And each of the pieces, when it came down to expressing them and sharing them and naming them, all of the names were really important. So I spent a lot of time thinking about, what does this piece mean? I went all the way back into what I felt like at the time. I listened to voice memos and journal entries to really, really make sure that I was honest and authentic in sharing this messaging through my work.
Ayana, may I ask, so the title of all of these, encompassing all of these, is Forgiveness is a Place?
Yep.
Welcome.
Yep.
So how does this particular one fit into that title?
Yeah, so this piece, along with the two others that you saw, those were the beginning of the collection. So I'll explain a little bit about how it was set up. So it was set up as a story, and this was the prelude. So this was the beginning of the story, and then as you move throughout the gallery, there was a different set of work in a different medium. So this is the beginning. This is like really trying to understand, get a good idea of what's not necessarily get a good idea of what's happening, but just express myself. And this piece is processed. This was actually charcoal and color pencil. And so these were all kind of towards the beginning or the middle of the display. So when you first kind of walked in, this is what I was hoping for you to view. And as you start to see more of the pieces, you'll see what I mean as things start to change and mediums and colors change. So this is one piece. So now we're getting into a totally different medium. We're getting into color pencil. We're getting into a different expression. This one is called Divine. And at this time, I was transitioning out of the space, out of the, out of my head and more into like owning my feelings, owning my part in the relationship that I was in. At the time, there were friendships that I was dealing with, some that stayed, some that left. I had a cousin who had passed away. So there were so many things that were going on as this body of work was being created. And this was the area of time where things were transitioning into I feel like a better place. This one is Faith. And again, similarly, playing with this new medium, getting more comfortable with color pencil, with texture, with the hair, especially, and, digging into like the expression and what does this, piece feel like. And the next one is alignment. So there was a point where I really started to like fall in love with color pencil. So I was nervous starting each of the pieces, but as I did it, it surprised me and I got really excited about creating something new. And I would say keeping the background white was important to keep your focus on the piece, right? There's so much color, there's so much detail. It almost didn't need anything else at this time. Like it was in the center. The focus should be on the piece. What does it feel like? What do you feel like, as you're seeing this, as you're walking through a gallery or even looking at it on screen, right? So it's literally like your focus in your eye is very much in the center of this. So
Ayana, may I ask you? Oh, I see.
yeah.
Oh, I can't read the chat yet until I'm done with this, so that gives me an excuse. I can't see the other question. No, I'll get to it. Oh, you can see them? Yeah. Oh, yes, your co-host. Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the questions from Lisa was, when you try a new medium, do you experiment on your own or study and take classes? So I actually really, I would say I experiment. I actually recently started to not even take classes. I just started going on YouTube and just kind of looking at how other artists make things. But when this body of work was created, I was just playing around, right? Like I didn't, it wasn't necessarily the color pencil was a new medium for me because I haven't used it in this way before. But the other ones, I had familiarity with them. And then, thank you, Vinny. And estimate how long these take me. So that was a question. It's funny. Someone asked me that question recently and I can't really answer that. And it's because when I was mentioning, I kind of draw when I feel like, and what feels good to me. When I was working on these pieces, the pieces were not meant to be in a show, right? They were created because I needed to release this emotion that I was feeling. And so this piece that we're looking at right now, I started the drawing a year before. And then the next year or maybe a couple of months, I think it was about not a year. It wasn't a full year, maybe 6 months later, I decided to go back in and work on it. So that's sometimes how I will work on a piece, or if I'm really into it, like some of the earlier graphite drawings you guys saw, those pieces I would go work at for a couple of hours, like every night. So I can't put a hard number on it, but they do take some time. They definitely take time. And this,
oh, sorry, go ahead. I didn't
know.
know. Did we cover all the questions? I want to make sure to get to.
And then is there another artist I look to for inspiration? So I actually, it's so funny. Like my background is in art, thank you, and design, and I've gone to the MFA tons of times, and I was in all these programs, but I don't necessarily have like artists. Like I can't go back to an era or a time where I'm like, oh, this person, you know, really excites me. I think that one artist I can say right now is Kehinde Wiley. He is a Black man, contemporary artist, and he did the Obama portrait. And I love his work. I love the detail in his work, the realism. There are many other artists that I see and I get excited about. But to be totally honest, I would say that people around me, I know a lot. I mean, growing up in the art space, art community, most of my friends are artists. So I get really excited by their work in the community, right? And I showed earlier, like the wall behind me has work from like my friends or people I know or artists like Aqua Holmes, you know, and Barrington Edwards and all these other folks have been doing this work for so long. So I get really excited about their pieces, right? Because they're, and they live here. They've been doing this. They're in however old, right? In their 60s, 50s, 60s or whatever. So those are some of the people that excite me.
Ayana, as you're going through your days, because I'm noticing the difference in the muscular behavior in the faces that you've drawn, especially the one where the woman, you see the profile and it's like the greenish in the face.
Yep.
I'm really struck by the lack of tension in that portrait. So as you're going through, you know, life, we have ups and downs and emotions every day. Are you taking note? Are you saying, oh, okay, this is a moment that I want to capture? Or is it just like you start on a blank canvas and you just start drawing?
I will find a reference image. So it'll probably be best to describe the process a little bit more. So I'll find a reference image and if the image speaks to me, if it feels good, I will use that image and like try to replicate it on a canvas, on a piece of paper. I don't follow the colors. I use my own colors. So some of those images that you saw that were really full, like 5, 6 different colors, the image is just someone's skin tone. So it was never, the image doesn't look like that. So I am swapping out really dark browns or light browns for like oranges and yellows and reds. So I'm really very much using like my imagination and what I feel like to express the color or like visually express the color of their skin.
I was also struck by where you put your signature. It's so nice and not distracting.
Yeah, it's like the hardest thing. It literally is one of the hardest things. I just finished a piece and I was like, where am I going to sign this? Like, I have no idea, but I don't want it to be loud and big and all of that because it, you know, it is important for you to be able to see the work. I did see more questions in the chat. Piece is an acrylic painting, so only acrylic. And so the work that I do, they are very small. And I have worked small. It's comfortable for me. It definitely is a choice. But after I finished this body of work that had like 19 pieces, I really got excited to work larger. A couple of people have asked me about working larger, almost completing murals and things like that, which I'm hoping to do, excuse me, which I'm hoping to do at some point. But I have started working on some larger paintings. One of the paintings I have is like 24 by 48. It's a very long piece. I've started working on bigger, like much bigger canvases. So this year there will be much bigger work coming from me.
Neat. So have we left anything out? We've dealt with the visual art. We've dealt with the brand the marketing piece. Is there any other component that we covered in our pre-conversation that you wanted to bring out?
Yeah.
This is
So the other side of all of this is that, when I started creating work, it was, as a form of expressing myself, and I really enjoy art and design. But the other thing is the access to arts and communities, the access to arts and communities of color and Black communities. And again, when I started, it was more so experimenting, figuring out what I like, but then I started to see the difference in what was offered. And I really I noticed that the conversations I was having was around access. And I started to join different boards and have more conversations with folks around this. So I joined I'm on the board of the Arts and Business Council, along with Bithyah. And I am also on the board of the American Institute of Graphic Artists, AIGA Boston chapter, and Boston Arts Academy. And it was important for me to be in these spaces and on these boards because of, who's making the decisions, right? And do we have funds to create opportunities for people to access art, young people, older people, like intergenerational, right? And what does that look like? And so my work is now moved into the other side of it, has moved into thinking about access and thinking about where are these funds coming from and who receives these things. And most recently, that body of work that you guys just saw, I created a series of workshops, and they were called Art and Healing Workshops. And what we did was we basically looked through the work similar to how we're doing, but I had the original pieces. And then there was an activity, whether it was either yoga or collage making, and the activity reflected the work that they saw. So you'd get to see the work, we'd have a conversation, and then create a piece that represented what you felt like, right? So it wasn't a heavy prompt where I was like, you have to make this thing, but it was like, what brings you joy? What is the emotion that comes, after you see this work?
Yeah, that was a really, oh, go ahead. Excuse me.
No, that's okay.
It was just very moving to me how you came to that point of offering those workshops. You said that you had a show and people were coming to you as you were sharing that this was your process to get to forgiveness, and how people were coming up to you telling you about their life, their lives. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was really interesting, and that's what kind of pushed me into doing the workshop. So going back to the day of the gallery show, like the people that were in there were telling me parts of their relationships. They're like, someone was like, yeah, I just went through a divorce and this is what I'm feeling like. Another person was like, I'm in this stage of my life with a relationship. I'm not quite over it, but I'm in the middle stages like you were. So what it did was it opened the door in this space for people to be vulnerable and share themselves and what they were feeling, right? So imagine if I decided to be like, no, I'm not going to share anything. I'm not going to be honest and open, because I never would talk about any of this stuff before this. And if I didn't do that, it wouldn't have opened the door for so much vulnerability from other people. And the same thing happened with the workshop. So the workshops happened across 3 libraries in Boston, Dorchester, Adams Street Branch, Mattapan Branch, and Roxbury. And they were free workshops, and they were like refreshments. You could look at artwork, you can make things. You get a free art kit. Yes.
So, okay, because I like to get down to it, right?
Yes.
Okay, so these workshops, right? For the people who have not experienced them, I'm one of them, right? I mean, I definitely appreciate the emotional release of like what you're saying. People are coming to you and they're sharing. It's a need, or they wouldn't be sharing with a company. So, but my question is what would you say to the naysayer who says, okay, that's great, touchy-feely, I get it, whatever. And people that might not be prone to getting into the sandbox and like getting in touch with their feelings, what would you say to the person who thinks that, that's wish-wash, that's for
I would allow them to feel what they're feeling. Like you have a reason for feeling that, right? You know, and I continue to remind myself every single piece of artwork isn't going to resonate in the same way, right? No, everyone's not going to stop and be like, oh my gosh, this is going to change my life, right? We hope so, but it might not. It probably won't, but there will be a select few that does happen too. And I'm grateful for the moments where people just look, like the fact that you take the moment to look. You can say what you say, you can not like it, but at the end of the day, you looked at the piece, you had a feeling. Okay, I've slowed you down enough in life, right? We have social media, we have phones. The fact that you've stopped and you've looked at a piece of artwork, I feel like I've done my job.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So as a professional, because this is not all you do, how do you balance your professional persona with sharing personal life? How do you do that where personal brand is concerned?
I think I'm still trying to figure it out, but I know that there are certain things I will not share, right? When I get on social media, I'll share things related to my artwork, the food I cook, the things I like to do, but there are like hard no's of things that I won't share. So I am pretty clear with myself about like, I'm not going to share this, but I will be open enough about these other things. And I balance it out. And I feel like it's become a little easier to balance it with this collection of work because again, like I've noticed what happened when I decided to be open and vulnerable, that it opened that door. So I reminded myself that it was okay to share that. Again, understanding everyone's not going to resonate. It may sound repetitive because the internet can be trendy. But what's important to me is knowing that it's coming from an authentic space. Right? Like even like I'm sharing this because this is important. This is a journey I've gone through. And it's important for me to let that out. Now, if only 2 people see it or like it or whatever, okay. But at the end of the day, I know that I shared this message that could possibly change one person's life or could make them like really excited or want to be inspired or do something. But I definitely feel like I've had boundaries on like what I will share and how I'll share it.
That's wonderful. Well, you can tell it's definitely benefiting people to see that there's a platform to be human.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's honestly, that's what it is. Like, I think it's so challenging now with all of like, we're getting hit with so much social media, this, that, and, to be your full self and to be authentic in a world that tells you to do other things, right? And to be like this person, to act like this, or to climb this ladder, when you go against that and you decide to be your true self, there's so much, I feel like, that is behind it. And there's so much change that happened and so many shifts that can happen to help somebody else. So
Wonderful. I'm going to check the chat and see if there are other people who are, let's see.
More questions?
Oh, I just see, let's see, a comment. Lisa says, what a gift you offer through your art and emotional vulnerability. Yes.
Yeah, there's a question about the portrait.
Okay.
I saw growth and it's beautiful. It stands out amongst the others. So I don't know yet. So I really enjoy doing portraits of Black women. A couple of years ago, I remember I had trouble figuring like what I wanted to do. So I would do a little bit of everything. And I found like I got really excited and it felt really comfortable and really good to make portraits of Black women. I'm thinking about like my emotions, myself. And I do like to experiment with some other things, but mainly that's my wheelhouse right now. The growth piece was created in 2017, and it's one of actually my best-selling pieces. And that piece was created at a time where I was going through a lot. I had like a surprise medical situation come up, and I was just going through a lot of things emotionally. And it was my first time working with watercolors again, but it was this time where I was expressing myself, through the work during a hard moment in my life. So I am hoping to experiment a little bit more. I will say that with different types of pieces. I love plants, as you can see, flowers, plants, all that good stuff. So definitely hoping to experiment a little bit more.
Well, I'm also excited that 982786 has been decoded for us. That's Napoleon Jones Henderson.
Oh,
He says, wonderful and uplifting
goodness.
conversation.
I love that it's decoded.
Yes.
Yay.
Thank you so much. And so, Ayana, how do we follow your work? How do we
Yeah.
get in touch with you if we'd like to ask about what workshops you're offering in the community, any pieces that you have available?
Yeah, so my website is my name, ayanamack.co. So not .com, .co. And I have a newsletter I send out monthly, an email. I will just give you updates on new products. I will share events coming up, and I will, yes, products, events, anything that's happening. I can tell you now, I will be on March 11th, I will be at the ICA for their harbor market. So I'm going to be selling some of my products. So some of the products that I carry are archival, like limited edition archival prints. And the way I explain it to people, you guys may know, but I explain them as pieces. Like if you want to invest in artwork and you may not want an original, or you may not be able to afford an original at this time, they're like museum quality. I have them framed, and I have them professionally framed. I have them printed on like beautiful paper. So I sell those. I make hand painted glassware. If you want, I can share screen and share something.
Okay, yes, please do. We have about 2 more minutes, but I'm excited. I'm sure we will be in touch with you also, Ayana, for upcoming programming.
Yeah, no, I would love that. I like this kind of conversation. Give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So this is my website. And I will just show you some of the things I was talking about. So those archival prints. So when you go to the website, this will pop up. And if you want to stay connected, you can put your email in here. And that's when you'll get those emails once a month. So these are the prints that are available, archival. And I have glassware, some hand-painted glassware.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you. I make champagne flutes, what is it? Wine glasses, stemless, and stem wine glasses in different colors and patterns. I also have, what else?
Do you take requests, Ayana, also as far as designs on those? Or
I do not at this time, but I think that at some point I will, because you were not the only person that asked me. I also have some, those are the stemless glass, image of the stemless glassware. And I have greeting cards that come in a pack of 8. So you get like pretty much most of those images you saw, including growth. So I'm constantly updating the shop. And I can tell you right now, I actually have, I have some of those prints that are framed in like a gold frame with like a nice mat. So those will be going up on the website soon. So if you are looking for something that's ready to hang and limited edition, those will be coming up.
This is wonderful. Yeah. So ayanamack.co. It's 1:45, so I want to let everyone go on time, but Ayana, thank you so much. So much you've offered us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and you guys are welcome to, if you have questions or you want to email me, I will also put my email in the chat. I appreciate this and your good energy today. I have a lot going on, so I'm very happy to have some good conversations like this. So you're more than welcome to email me and connect with me in other ways.
Thank you so much, Ayana.
Thank you.
One again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate everyone who attended today. Thank you, Bithyah, for having me.
Thank you, Ayana. Talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.